Welcome to Founded on Purpose. I'm Kt McBratney, and Season 2, we're all about after the exit. Today, I'm joined with Yana Welinder, founder and CEO of Kraftful, which was just acquired by Amplitude. She's using her product chops and customer focus to help teams turn customer voice into product clarity, which is what Kraftful's been doing since almost day one. Yana, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be here.
I mean, there's so many places we could start in your Kraftful and founder journey. Let's begin. Can you give us like the 1 minute pre-Kraftful arc? Because you've had quite an interesting journey going from being a professor at Stanford teaching tech law all the way through YC to today, right?
Yeah.
Post-acquisition. Give us
Yes.
a quick rundown of then to now and how you got here.
Yeah. Yeah. So as you mentioned, I got started in law. I jumped around in law quite a bit. Ended up doing a lot of in academia, and I think I realized that the reason I was doing that was because I was sort of always looking to build and not necessarily kind of apply legal frameworks, but actually come up with legal frameworks. And then ultimately, I ended up getting to do a lot of product work and realized that actually I'm looking to build in other ways, not build legal frameworks, and ended up becoming a product manager. Then for most of my career, I was everything from sort of PM number two at a fast growing unicorn to then ultimately leading products with millions of users. And so I really had a lot of product pain points uh, um, that I experienced. And I joke about kind of thinking back to my time just right before starting Kraftful. I would spend a lot of my Friday nights with like a good glass of wine curled up on the sofa reading app store reviews because I really wanted to know like what our users were saying about our product, and I couldn't get that qualitatively in any other way. And what ultimately then led to what Kraftful was before the acquisition, which is this way to gather user feedback from all the different sources and learn from that in a really fast and effective way and actually be able to act on it.
Let's touch a couple more points on the beginning of that journey because you got into Y Combinator with a last minute pitch.
Yes.
And initially, Kraftful was focused on being Amplitude for IoT. A little bit of
Yes.
foreshadowing there. But yeah, tell us about that last minute shot and then what
hmm
changed during YC.
My last job prior to Kraftful, I led product at If, and most of our customers, in fact, what the market was doing at the time was that there was so much connected hardware, and all of that connected hardware was getting interconnected so that you'd be able to do, have your fridge actuate your light bulb, or, I'm serious, that is not the use case, but and we at If were powering all of that. So my job ended up being, and sort of as a head of product, I ended up traveling a lot with our sales team and meeting, kind of heads of product, CPOs, VPs of product at various tech companies that were primarily hardware first and were connecting, making their products now connected. And a lot of the pain points that I learned about were very similar across those experiences, and that's what actually led me. The first idea was Webflow for IoT. That's what we got into YC with, and then Kraftful ultimately became Amplitude for IoT, and then dropped IoT altogether. I would say the sort of the one thread throughout all of this was we're always serving product teams, but what kind of product teams was very different. And I was fortunate to be one of the like first people to experiment with large language models when it was sort of just very early on, and got to play with like GPT three way before Chat GPT, and we built our GPT powered feature, and we launched, sort of prototyped it very early on, but we ultimately launched it as part of that broader analytics solution back in 2021. And we saw a clear pull towards that one feature that was analyzing app reviews alongside the kind of the broader analytics suite. And kept seeing more and more evidence of people wanted to use that outside of the IoT space. People wanted to use that. And so eventually we're sort of like this, we should just go all in on this and make that into a complete solution. And that's what ultimately became what Kraftful is today.
And the pandemic played a bit of a role in that, right? Because, thinking back in time, that's when that was forcing things in the IoT world to slow down a bit. You were noticing these signals that made the pivot seem pretty obvious, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And you actually coded the first LLM yourself. Is that right?
Yeah, the first solution I did with the, I didn't make the LLM. I used but I made the first prototype using GPT-3.
So you're getting these
Yeah.
signals of product market fit, right? You've got this use case you can zero in on. You've already been like just very, very focused on product leaders, right? And product teams
Yes.
and serving them. We're fast forwarding a little bit, right? So you've got some traction, you're out of YC. A lot of people have a product hunt launch on their kind of like mental vision board for, or their strategy for how they're going to really gain meaningful traction. However, not everyone does it or succeeds in doing it,
Hmm.
but you did. So talk
Yeah.
us through that. Like, how did you know that that would be a key strategy for you versus,
Mhm.
somebody who's doing a more B2C consumer tech or something completely different? And what did you do to make that channel actually work instead
Yeah.
of posting up a page and asking your friends to upvote it and sitting there with a couple dozen?
Yeah. Yeah, so Product Hunt, you're right. Product Hunt became one of our most critical paths for go-to-market. We grew in the 2 years that we did what Kraftful is now. We grew to over 60,000 users, 100% organically, mostly through social media, but Product Hunt was a piece of that. And I the very first product hunt launch was quite successful, but then we kind of kept getting better and better and better, and ultimately kind of got these like product of the day and product of the week awards in things like that. But the reason I ended up doing it was we did the very first launch, and there's a few things we did to make it successful. Um, and then when I started having some enterprise conversations, the piece I heard was that we learned about Kraftful from Product Hunt. And in fact, we sit on product teams spend a lot of time on Product Hunt looking for the next big thing. And that's when I realized, okay, we gotta maximize on this channel and really go all in. And yeah, some things we did was to make sure that we activated our entire audience around Product Hunt and made sure that we really got upvoted as much as possible. We would actually send our entire user and customer base emails around that time to get them to come and support us there and talk about their experience. And that was really helpful. And then obviously that kind of then got amplified, and we got more traffic as a result of that Product Hunt launch. And then the next time round, we could have an even bigger presence and so forth.
You created waves of it. And as someone who loves product led and community led growth, you knew who your community was and you went where they were. And you started with the fundamentals and really pinned it down. 60,000 inbound, right? Like you had organic growth, you've got product market fit, and of course, like every founder who is growing quickly, rapidly, aiming for this exit, you had to fundraise, right? Or you
Yes.
chose to fundraise, depending on how
Yes.
you want to position it. And you raised 3 rounds, right? So like, or I think it was 2019 and 2020, 2021, and then again in 2023.
That's right.
As the founder, across those races, what did you optimize for? Knowing what you knew about your product market fit and product teams.
Yeah, there's a few different things I optimized for. One was I optimized for speed because I was a solo founder, and so there's like this uh, going through YC, we got this very clear like direction, like you divide and conquer, and I was sort of like, well, I can't divide and conquer. It is just me. So that was definitely. I remember this particularly with the last 2023 race because there I went to fundraise right after our launch of like that pivoted LLM powered product. Um, and I was thinking I was actually going to do a longer fundraise, and I
Mhm.
stepped away in the first week. So many things from a product perspective started falling apart that I was just like, okay, regroup. This needs to be a much quicker fundraise than I had imagined previously. I need to wrap this up, and I think I did. I think I wrapped up that race in like a couple of weeks, like a few weeks, and went back to building just because it was so critical for me to be there building and talking with customers and making sure our product was doing what it needed to do. So that was the most critical. I would say in previous races, I did a little bit more optimization around like I wanted to make sure that we had diverse founders, that diverse investors in our cap table and things like that. And so I spent a little bit more time, but I would say that was kind of the most critical where I was just like, speed is all that matters. I need to do this quickly and I need to get back to building. And I'm glad I did it that way because that ended up, those few months ended up being critical for us and our growth and a lot of things that were sort of really determine the destiny of Kraftful.
And also doing this, one of the ways we first connected was through venture backed moms, VC backed moms. And you have other jobs outside of work, right? Like you have a full life, you have family, you have all these things. So speed being of the essence so that you aren't trying to multitask all the things that deserve your single tasking, including building.
Exactly, absolutely, yeah. No, like I think being a parent really makes you uh, such a great like prioritizer, where you get such a clear sense of like what do I need to do and how do I need to do it, right? And then you can look at certain tasks and be like, nope, this does not deserve my time. There's some other way. This is not the way. I'm not doing it, right?
Absolutely. Like I hear like a mom founder and I'm like, that person knows how to prioritize, how to delegate, and how what needs to be knows deeply like what needs to be done and which balls, like the metaphor about if you're gonna drop a ball, make sure it's one that's rubber, not the glass ones. And I think,
Mhm.
for better or for worse, mom founders have that. And it's an advantage. It's a unique advantage. All right. So things are going well. You've raised, you're growing. The pace is where you want to be. At what point did acquisition become something that was a serious consideration?
So we got approached by actually a number of companies over like a period of time, and some of those were not necessarily super interesting, and also came at different times when I didn't think that it was a good idea for me to step away and start thinking about that. But there was a particular moment when we got an offer, or I should say, we didn't get an offer, but we got interest from a company that had a really clear strategic um, interest in Kraftful, and that's when I sort of evaluated, okay, is this the right time? Is this the right type of strategic fit? And is this do I feel like that like I can invest time in this, right? Because most acquisitions fall through. And so you have to kind of be very mindful of like, even if everything goes smoothly here, chances are by the very end it all falls apart and I will have invested this time. So like how do I do this? How do I structure this in a way so that it's meaningful? And then I ran a whole process. I ended up reaching out to like 25 companies like the C-suite, like the CEO, CPO, CTO, connecting with over 10 of them that were actually like really interested and ran a process with 10 plus companies. And ultimately got to where we are today, acquired.
I want to get to kind of the step by step about the M&A process in a minute. Before we get there, though,
Mhm.
you're in a different position being courted by companies versus some acquisitions where the founder is looking to sell.
Yes. Mhm.
How do you think that that positioned you for the conversations that you ultimately had and the negotiations that you went into with Amplitude eventually?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's huge. I've heard the saying, companies are companies are sold, not bought. sorry, companies are bought, not sold, rather. Um, and now I lived it, and I think and I now understand a slightly different nuance, which is that it's not that you cannot sell a company, you can, but I do think that you will get a slightly better outcome if it initiated from inbound, given your circumstances. And there's going to be companies that have incredible circumstances, and if they just like then go out and find potential buyers, they can still have a much better outcome. But I think it all depends on like, yeah, like did you get outcome, your circumstances, also like the M&A market, right? Like if for example, right now there's a ton of AI companies up for grabs, right? And so that makes it much harder to sell a company than it was maybe like a year ago.
Right. Which is it's wild to think just a year ago it was a different world, but here we are, and it's a train that is not stopping. You're talking to companies now, potential acquirers. Some aren't cutting the bill, they don't make sense, strategically for where your time and focus need to be, for the vision you see for the product you've poured lots of heart, soul, intellect, and talent into. What surprised you as you were having conversations with potential acquirers?
Yeah. So I think the piece that surprised me. So I mentioned that I had like I had a lot of conversations, right? Like I was talking with a lot of companies, some public companies like Amplitude, some private companies, some fast growing private companies, um, and what I thought was really interesting was to see how similar the conversations were for all the folks that were really interested, and they were asking similar type questions, a lot of different questions, but similar type. They were trying to um, learn about my product, usually in similar ways, because we're a PLG uh, a product where you can just sign up online for free and you can use it and you can try it. And at Amplitude, literally, like when we connected, I saw the CPO, Francois. He was using the product for like a bit like multiple, it looked like multiple hours in our analytics platform. And I reached out to him and he was like, hey Francois, what's up? And he was like, we should be one team, right? So that was like a very clear, like he could use our product and evaluate it that way, and a lot of folks did. And what was helpful about that was then seeing the folks who weren't serious, or the folks who were actually just trying to um, like snoop. and and I think that that's the thing that happens a lot. Like if there's a company that's in the acquisition process, then you get a lot of like competitors or competitor types that that want to be part of that process, because yes, they sign an NDA, but there's very little teeth in that situation, right? Because ultimately you'll get acquired by someone, and like you're not going to go after someone who will ultimately have learned how to build what you build in that process. And so that was a very clear, like talking with lots of folks made it easy for me to identify the folks who were not good faith.
And especially for you, because your team is now part of the Amplitude team. So it's not just thinking about where your product and your business are going, but it's where your customers are going. It's where your team is going. It's where potentially you're going. You're going to have longer term relationships versus a transactional only sale, right? Where there's a lot of things that stay
Absolutely.
the same. Give us the quick, like the 30-second story of fit. How did you know
Yeah.
Amplitude was the one?
So there's a few different things. I think like one thing that with I think every time you're considering an acquisition, and the really important thing is to step back and be like, why do I want to do this? If I'm going to do this, right? Like you always have this, like maybe unsuccessful and all of that. But if this will happen, what's the reasons for me for this company, right? And in our case, and you have to do it, like even if in this case it was inbound, I still had to have that thinking process so that I could then like optimize for the right things. And for me, it was very important that my team, my investors got a good outcome, that that our product was incorporated in a good way where we got to scale up and have a bigger presence, and make sure that's the thing we created got to live on. That's where like public company became an important factor, because then you know that that's a stable situation, right? Like the product gets incorporated and it's going to live on. Um, and then And then sort of just like culture fit. Will this be like a good culture fit? And with Amplitude, obviously there's this incredible like synergy between our products in that our product tells you what users are saying and their product tells you what they're doing, and that's such an important whole holistic picture to know when you're trying to build a great product, because oftentimes if you're just looking at customer behavior, that's missing the point around what's their intent, why are they doing the things they're doing. And then if you're just looking at what users are saying, well, oftentimes what people say is not what they'll do, right? So there is that like being able to see it all is a really powerful, like we are in such a powerful position now going out as the only solution that can do both things. That will be huge, right? So from a product perspective, yes. And then from a culture perspective, just like meeting the team and particularly meeting the founders and realizing that they're very similar type founders to
Mm.
who I am as a founder. And that's important because I'm bringing a team to, and my team doesn't know anything about this, right? But you cannot bring your team into the conversation until the very end. There's another like important strategic reason for doing that. And so I need to find a really good fit for my team. My team, kind of always true for an early stage team, they took a bet on me. They wanted to join
Mhm.
a company where I was leading the company. And so if I can find a company that A is founder led, that's I think is very important for early stage team members to also be in the founder led environment, and then make sure that it's founders who have kind of similar thoughts around building companies and building products. That was really important for me, and Amplitude checked all those boxes.
Okay. This is one of the rare chances we get to unpack a bit of the process of what an acquisition actually looks like. Can you talk us through the steps that you went through and maybe what you were prepared for along the way and what you had to learn or figure out as you went?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so the kind of the general steps, I had all of those conversations. Then there's an LOI or an IOI, that is kind of the term sheets, that then gets heavily negotiated, because once you have signed a term sheet, you enter this exclusivity period where you cannot talk to any other companies for a period of time. And you can't talk with any other company for a period of time. And then if you at the end of that time, if you can start talking to other companies again, they know that for some reason that company didn't buy you, right? So it really is the end in some ways, right? So you really need to maximize for being in a really good spot when you sign that term sheet. So that gets heavily negotiated. Once you've signed the term sheet, you then enter that exclusivity period. I should say before you get to that, there's usually some early diligence that happens before the term sheet, right? Kind of for the company to learn what you have so that they can figure out what they would want to offer for that. But then once you've signed, you do much deeper diligence, and there's something called like public company diligence, which public companies do. That is more diligence than private companies do. Um, and in during that time, you also kind of negotiate the details of the definitive agreement, which then ends up being kind of once you sign that, that's the closing, unless the transaction is above a certain amount, in which case there's also like a regulatory step.
Mhm.
So there's lots and lots of steps, and that time window can be, for us, it was several months. I've heard of situations where it can take up to a year. And, I think we've all been following the Cursor story recently, and in their case, the final acquisition took like a weekend, right? So it can be anything. There's like you really don't
Your
know what you're
mileage
gonna
may
get.
vary.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
How did it feel to be able to tell your team with a degree of not just confidence but certainty, like this is happening, we've done it? What did that feel like
Yeah,
to be able to go from also, not being able to talk about it pretty much to anyone to sharing
yeah.
this huge news?
I mean, I can tell you that after sharing the news was such a huge relief. Just shortly prior to sharing the news, it was just like nerve wracking. Like we're very early stage, going from early stage to public company. Like they don't know the founders, they don't know anything. Like how are folks going to react? Like, will I be able to like get them excited about this? Because I'm excited, but like, will they get excited? So definitely nerve-wracking. And then yeah, the huge relief of finally being able to talk to the team, because it's hard to describe just how hard it is to run a company, particularly as a solo founder, and also be going through this process where first you're talking with a ton of companies, and then you're talking with one company, but a lot. And on the other end, like on your side, it is just you. And on the other side, there's like a whole diligence team with like lots of like the whole army of people. And they're all setting up meetings with you, and they're all sending you like questionnaires and like requests for documents like every single day. And you know, in our case, we also started some of the like the product integration conversations actually at the very beginning, shortly after signing the term sheet. So that was going on too. So just like it's a lot of time, and a lot of time that you can't explain to your team. Well, you also like competently need to run the company until the very end, and ideally be like making progress, because things could fall apart until the very end. Things can fall apart, so it's really really important to do things like, for example, we kept shipping until the very end. Our very last big product launch was like during the diligence process, like shortly before we signed. Yeah, you just have to keep going, which is it's kind of an insane process. I think I didn't quite realize what it would be until I was in it.
And their whole diligence team has each other to talk to about it. They have you to talk to. You have a whole list of folks that you can't and shouldn't talk to about it yet. How did you how and who did you lean on during that time, knowing you couldn't share everything, and with some folks you couldn't share anything?
One thing that I was very happy that I did for this process was to spend a lot of time selecting my lawyers. And so I interviewed a lot of lawyers going into this, and found the unicorn lawyer. I mean, they were all focused. They were all M&A experts, but I found the one that I felt would be just the right level of understanding the urgency, and also kind of being flexible enough and knowing enough about our situation. Because as one example, we're a YC company, and so I've raised all three rounds using YC safes. And one thing I realized interviewing lawyers is that there's a lot of M&A lawyers that I needed to educate on how safes work. And when I did in those conversations, that was a very easy way for me to disqualify them and be like, well, I can't spend the acquisition process where can't trust their advice, right? So I had very excellent lawyers who I worked with. I would ask them things, but I would also like ask ChatGPT for legal advice, and then be able to run that legal advice by them. That's how excellent they were, and that they were flexible enough to understand that I need to get answers in the moment. And sometimes that is going to be in the middle of the night when I can like open my phone and like pull up research mode and you know, and get an answer then, and then I will run it by them and get a kind of validation or whatever I was looking for.
Which, just an aside, I'll drop a link in the show notes, but the way that you've incorporated AI into your personal workflows over the years has been so fascinating and helpful as I've looked at how I can best use AI. So just a little shout out and thank you for doing that. There's a great podcast that you did where you shared kind of how at that point in time AI had shifted your workload dramatically. So for anybody who wants to nerd out on that, we got you covered. All right, so
You
it's
know, on that point, I will say that I thought a lot during the entire acquisition process. I thought a lot about how fortunate I am that I am selling at a time when the O3 model has launched and had just launched. And it was so fascinating. It's like this, I have this one question. I need to get perspective, like I need to research this. Let me try the latest model. Let me also try like the highest reasoning mode on the latest model. Let me also try an older model, and just like get a sense for like if I was selling 3 months ago, what would I be able to know? And I ended up using AI a lot throughout the entire process, sometimes for things like, just like asking, the CFO just told me that they have their earnings call, so that's gonna like be a limitation on his time. What exactly does that entail? Like, what kind of limitation? When can I go back to him to like ask about things? When is he expected to be done with this work, right? So like those kind of practical questions. I had a lot of them. I had lots and lots of them every single day, and being able to lean on AI for that was incredible.
So cool. So cool. Okay, so it's what, July 2025. You've announced it. The world knows Kraftful is becoming part of Amplitude, that the product will be integrated into it, all of that. Your team knows. You have this relief. In the first 30 days after this acquisition, what changed for you, be it in your calendar, your energy, even your identity as a founder and a product leader?
I mean, like most practically, like if I think about the day to day, so many meetings. um, I say, big companies have a lot of meetings, and I've forgotten about that. And I don't think Amplitude has exceptionally many meetings for their size, but it's just like a lot of meetings. And at Kraftful, we had really set up a culture like a not like a no meeting culture where we didn't have a meeting unless we had something specific we needed to talk through. So most things were handled asynchronously, and then we would jump on huddles whenever there was something. But then we had a very clear agenda, and then that conversation could be as short as just figuring out that thing. Uh, on the flip side, just having so many people to think about how to make the thing I'm building successful is so incredible, right? Like I've forgotten what it's like to like not be responsible for all the things myself. And I keep being reminded that by different people on the team where it's sort of like I'm like, well, when am I supposed to do this thing? And they're like, you're not doing that thing. You know, you don't need to do that thing. There is no like, oh, right, okay. Um, and it's uh, because my mind is always spinning. How do I make this successful? How do I make this successful? Like, what's the next thing I can do? Can I do this? Is there something else I'm like looking at whenever like new models are launching? I'm always thinking like, how do we incorporate that? And there's like, oh, like I'm always as a founder, I'm always like spinning, right? And it's just like so interesting to see now. There's more other people that can be spinning on particular segments of the work too, and that's incredibly refreshing. And then I will say the last piece is I don't think I can be I can unfounder myself. Like I am going to be very much like focusing on getting it done and doing it my like kind of doing it fast and focus. I'm a doer. I'm not a planner. I'm not a talker, right? Like that's who I am. But I think that there's a reason this company acquired me in my company. And it probably is to have the impact that I was having before the acquisition, but within the company. And so I shouldn't be changing too much. I should try to keep that going as much as possible, even though it is within the bigger company. And now I get to kind of figure out how is it done within a bigger company? How is it doing? How is it being a founder within a bigger company? But it is trying to stick to my identity as much as possible.
Yeah, they clearly saw value in you as a leader and in those founder traits. And it's a really good reminder to folks that what you bring from your entrepreneurial journey into your next chapter, whatever that might be, it doesn't mean you got to turn that founder tendency off. I'm very similar. Like I don't think I could just go plug into an extremely huge, incredibly matrix organization and just focus on my little piece of the little piece of the little piece. I know myself too well. And there are places where that's a great asset to see a problem and immediately think about solving it and get to work, to your point. So I'm excited to see how that plays out for you in this new role. I'm curious, right? The podcast is called Founded on Purpose. From that first YC application all the way through to today, post acquisition, what purpose has kept you focused on building this? That's still true today.
Yeah, this is going to sound a bit cliche, but it is talking to users to build something people love. It's the wifey mantra, and I built the product around that, right? It is Kraftful made it easy for you to talk to users and build something people love based on all that information. And it's been true for me in terms of how I build, how I built the company from day one, and it is true for how I continue building now. I'm very much focused on, we're going to be launching the integrated experience in beta very soon, and I'm being asked a lot of questions around like what happens next. And there's some things I already know what will happen next because we learned a lot from our users at Kraftful, but some things I do not know because the whole piece is around this. Like we will unlock this, what users say and what users do together, and in that process, we will learn some things from these users to kind of solve that the best possible way. And I'm waiting to get it in their hands so that we can start learning from that. So super excited.
If you're down for it, I'd like to go into a quick lightning round because season one, we asked the same 8 questions of every guest. And I have a few of those questions I would love to hear your rapid fire response to.
Let's do it.
Okay, clearly you've done a lot of things right. You founded a company, you fundraised, you've done it your way without compromising who you are, how you work, the team culture you want. When was the last time you were wrong?
Hmm. I feel like um, I always pivoted too late. And it's funny because everyone's sort of always just like, oh, you pivoted so many times with such great certainty, and you just like did it, and you would like just switch off your previous product and just do it. But I always felt like I pivoted too late. Like I think that there was always probably a moment in time that I could have known to pivot slightly earlier and do it earlier. And I always, yeah, that's my own like pet peeve. Everything needs to be slightly faster,
I think there's a theme here. You like urgency and speed, and that's okay. Next one. Um, I'm trying to think of how to say this. Okay. So you're coming off of this really big win, this really big milestone, celebrated, made public. It feels like this big victory lap. What feels like a win today, coming off of that kind of big high of a major announcement?
Yeah. One kind of win is I now get to hear from Kraftful customers via Amplitude sales folks, and I get to hear that customer love that I when I heard it directly from those customers, I always had this like grain of doubt in my mind that are they just like telling me that because it's my baby and they feel like they can't really like I did so much to try to see like, oh yeah, yeah, let me just ignore all the like the positive things you're saying, but like, well, let me focus on the negatives, right? But now I'm not like there's a few conversations where I haven't been in the conversations. I'm just hearing secondhand where like they're like they've used Kraftful, they absolutely love Kraftful, they can't wait to get it back. In fact, when can they get it back? And hearing that is feels like a big win. Just like hearing that there's so many customers who absolutely love our product, and we build something people want, which is or people love, which feels huge.
Which clearly it worked, right? You knew the problem you wanted to solve, you stayed focused on it, you built something that solved that and now can continue to build that. So it's almost like, all of those hard days and multitasking and prioritizing and figuring out fundraising and figuring out acquisition and finding the right team, it led to here, right? And it's still continuing. The journey's not over yet, which is so exciting. So, where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, I probably it's still it. I still tweet, maybe not quite as much. Probably just I just need a bit of a break, but I'm gonna be tweeting much more again. And I've been trying to pick up my LinkedIn game a little bit, since I've primarily been a Twitter gal. But I think I'm starting to post a little bit more on the professional network. So
Amazing,
follow along
amazing.
there too.
Again, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing this. Like, this has been so enlightening. And I know a lot of founders are aiming to be where you're at, right? Like, this is kind of the success story they want to replicate for themselves and their company. And you sharing these stories gives them real practical advice and insight onto what it looks like. So thanks for allowing us to peel back the curtain on something that's often cloaked and shadowed.
Absolutely. Yeah, excited to chat about this. I love joining. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Founded on Purpose, a Renew Venture Capital podcast. Founded on Purpose is produced and hosted by me, Kt McBratney. For more conversations like this one, you can find all our episodes on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like this episode, give us a 5-star rating. Each one helps us reach more people who believe in changing the world through purposeful, profitable business. Until next time, be well.